When my daughter told me I wasn't welcome at her house for Christmas, I smiled, picked up my purse, and made one decision that would change everything. That's how it started. With one sentence delivered in a living room I practically built with my own hands and my own money. It was early December in Austin, Texas. The kind of winter where the sun still warms your skin at midday, but the nights carry a bite sharp enough to remind you the year is ending. I sat on my daughter Marissa's plush sectional sofa, the kind upholstered in pale cream fabric that dares you to spill a single drop of coffee, the kind I'd financed 2 summers ago when she and her husband decided their old furniture wasn't mature enough for their new home. The Christmas tree in the corner nearly grazed the ceiling beams, covered in designer ornaments with no trace of the ones Marissa made in kindergarten, the ones I still keep boxed in my attic. A candle burned on the console table, sandalwood and bergamot, her husband's choice. I noticed everything. I had offered a simple suggestion, something that felt like tradition. "Marissa, I can make my cornbread dressing this year," I said. "The one your daddy loves so much, remember? You said once it was better than anything we'd ever eaten on Thanksgiving." But instead of the smile I expected, her body stiffened. Her shoulders angled away from me like she was preparing for impact. Her gold wedding band caught the tree's twinkle lights as she fidgeted. Then she said it. "Mom, I don't think you should come for Christmas this year." At first, I thought I'd misheard. "What do you mean, baby?" My voice cracked against the quiet hum of the air conditioner. She avoided my eyes, staring instead at the marble coffee table, another purchase I'd helped them with when the old one didn't match their aesthetic. She said, "Daniel's family is coming. They'd prefer if you weren't here." Daniel, my son-in-law, a man who wore cufflinks to a backyard barbecue. His family from Boston, all degrees in money and pedigrees. They were polite enough in public, but I'd seen the way his father's eyes skimmed over me like I was an afterthought. "They'd prefer," I repeated slowly, tasting the words like sour milk. "It's just easier this way, Mom," Marissa added quickly. "They have their own traditions, their own way of doing things." Her voice got smaller with each sentence, as if she were collapsing inward. I sat there, stunned, glancing around the living room, the silk curtains I'd ordered after she complained about the neighbors seeing in, the hardwood floors that came from my home equity loan, the crown molding I charged to my credit card. Every inch of that house bore my fingerprints, my sacrifices, my love. And now I wasn't welcome inside it for Christmas? "Where should I spend Christmas then?" I asked quietly. "Maybe with Aunt Lydia, or we can do something the weekend after. You know, just us." The weekend after? Like Christmas was just another meeting that could be postponed? I stood, my knees stiff from years of double shifts and holding this family together after their daddy died. My purse strap slid over my shoulder. "I see." My voice was calm, too calm. "Mom, wait," Marissa said, rising halfway, but I was already moving. Past the gallery wall of family photos where my face grew smaller and less frequent, the coat closet that held Daniel's paler jackets, each one worth more than my entire winter wardrobe. My hand found the doorknob, cool metal, grounding me. I didn't look back. "Tell Daniel's parents I said Merry Christmas." The December air hit my face, brisk and unapologetic. Behind me, I heard Marissa call my name once, then the soft, final click of the door closing. My car sat under their string of fairy lights. I slid behind the wheel and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. For a long moment, I just breathed. In, out, in, out. Then I turned the ignition. the engine rumbled awake, steady and familiar, unlike the family I'd just left behind. As I drove through Austin's winding neighborhoods, the houses glowed with Christmas lights, each window framing families gathered in warmth and laughter. My stomach tightened. I thought of the down payment I drained my savings for, the second mortgage I took on to keep them afloat when Daniel's startup failed, the utility bills, the new roof, the furniture, the vacations. Every time I said yes, every time I believed love was measured in dollars. But sitting there, passing house after house where mothers were welcome, I knew something with icy clarity. The woman that I had been, the one who gave and gave and gave until she was invisible, she was done. By the time I reached my driveway, the decision was sealed. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over one contact. Just one, the bank officer who had helped me set up the automatic transfers 5 years ago. I smiled as I pressed call, because if Marissa and Daniel didn't want me at their Christmas table, they were about to learn what it felt like to sit at one they couldn't afford. And that was only the beginning. The first thing I did when I got home was not to cry. I brewed coffee. Old habit. When life tried to swallow me, I put a kettle on. The tiny, ordinary ritual kept my hands busy while my mind stacked facts. Facts were always kinder than feelings. They told you where you stood. On the kitchen table sat the brown accordion folder I'd avoided for months. I pulled the string, lifted the flap, and spread my life into piles. Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts with my name paying for someone else's comfort. The numbers looked like a language I used to speak fluently and had since pretended to forget. I started at the beginning, 5 Christmases ago, when Marissa and Daniel found the house in Barton Hills with the oak tree out front and the long windows that drank sunlight. They were so proud. The bank, less so. "We're so close," Marissa had said then, cheeks pink, just a small gap on the down payment. I had bridged that gap. I had called it love. I turned the first statement over and wrote a list in the margin. Down payment gift, $46,000 from my savings and a cashed out CD I swore I'd never touch. Hardwood floors, $12,800. Their allergies couldn't handle carpet. Curtains for privacy, $4,200. Custom widths, rush fee. Kitchen upgrade for Daniel's baking phase, $7,950. Phase lasted 3 weekends and 1 Instagram reel. Roof repair after the first storm, $9,600. New HVAC, $6,300. And then the automatic transfer, my quiet monthly shame, $2,700, leaving my account on the 15th every month until we stabilize. I added line after line, year after year. Pens ran out, I grabbed another. My calculator tapped its patient plastic. When I reached the last page, I wrote the total and circled it twice. $198,540. That was the number. A house worth of love sent in pieces. I stared at it until the ink looked wet. Then I did what I should have done the first time my gut said, "This isn't respect." I picked up my phone and dialed Delia at the credit union. "Hey, it's Elena Marino," I said, voice steady. "I need to cancel an automatic transfer." "Of course," she said, fingers clacking. "Which one?" "Account ending in 2143. Transfer to Barton Hills Mortgage ending in 0911. $2,700 on the 15th. "Yes, ma'am. I see it. You've been making that transfer, 5 years. "Too long," I said, soft but final. "Do you want to cancel after the next one or effective immediately?" A tiny pause. Delia and I weren't friends, but she'd heard enough stories at the counter to recognize when a woman had finally reached enough. "It's done," she said. "You'll get a confirmation email." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. When the call ended, the house sighed. At least it felt like it did. The quiet had a different weight. The porch light that flickered every evening suddenly looked like a thing I could fix instead of a problem I had to ignore so their lights could glow. My phone buzzed before the coffee even cooled. Marissa. Mom, Daniel's parents fly in tomorrow at 2:15. Can you pick them up? Alaska, Carousel B. Wear the navy dress they liked at the rehearsal dinner. I stared at the text, thumb hovering. The audacity would have made me laugh on a different day. Today, it clarified. I set the phone down and wrote a new list. Check legal exposure, paper trail, gift versus loan, inventory receipts, decide, silence or spotlight. The kettle clicked back off. I poured, added a splash of milk, and opened my laptop. If my money had built their life, the very least I could do was build my case. I made a folder on my desktop. Barton Hills, support. Inside subfolders, down payment, renovations, monthly transfers, utilities, texts. I dragged PDFs, scanned receipts, screen-captured bank apps. On social media, I found the photo of Daniel's parents under that chandelier I'd paid for. Caption, home for the holidays with family. I dragged that too. My hands moved fast. My heart did not. With every file saved, a little bit of that old fog lifted. It was like cleaning out a closet and finding the floor again. At noon, my phone rang. Daniel. I let it go to voicemail, then pressed play on speaker. Hi, Elena. His voice oiled through the room. We're just confirming you're grabbing Mom and Dad tomorrow. They'll have 3 bags and a garment bag. Could you please be on time? They're kind of particular about schedules. There was a smile in his voice, the kind that assumed obedience. I pressed the phone to my ear and called back. Daniel, it's Elena. I won't be picking them up. Silence. Then, I'm sorry, what? I'm not available, I said. Simple, clean. He exhaled a laugh. We're all busy, Elena, but it's family. I heard you weren't family at Christmas, I said, still gentle, so I'll let you manage your traditions. The smile left his voice. You're being unreasonable. I'm being consistent, I said. You set the boundary. I'm honoring it. Marissa's already stressed, he said, the warning under the words. Don't make this harder. I understand, I said. I'll see you both the weekend after, if that still works for you. He made a noise that wanted to be a scoff and a sigh at the same time. Fine, we'll figure something out. I'm sure you will, I said and hung up. It took 3 minutes for Marissa to call. Mom, what was that? She asked, breath hitching. Daniel says you refused. I did. But why? This is just logistics. It's respect, which is more than logistics. She was quiet, then tried again. They expect... I'm not a driver, I said, still kind. And I'm not a checkbook. I'm your mother. The line hummed with hard truth. Then she said the thing I knew had been waiting under all the small things. Daniel's parents think you make everything about you. I looked at the neat stacks on my table. I've made the mortgages about you for 5 years, I said. Today, I'm making the mortgage about me. What does that mean? She asked. Fear lives in that question, even when it wears anger's voice. It means the payments stop. Today. You can't, I said. Not cruel, just factual. I did. Mom, you'll fall behind. You can adjust your lifestyle. You can sell the Audi you bought before you got a raise. You can return the designer plates you use once a year. You can ask your in-laws to help. You have options. You're punishing me. No, baby, I said, and that word ached. I'm protecting me. She hung up. I set the phone down, hands remarkably steady.
I went back to the folder building, the list making, the quiet accounting of a woman who had finally put her own name on the balance sheet. By late afternoon, I had a binder, yes, a real one, with tabbed sections. I printed cover sheets with dates and totals. I slid plastic sleeves over the statements like armor. If I decided to send copies to anyone, family, friends, the HOA busybodies who love to narrate other people's choices, I could do it with a stamp and a walk to the mailbox. I took a break at sunset to fix the porch light. It took 10 minutes and a new bulb. The little glow it gave me felt ridiculous and profound. Inside, my email chimed. Confirmation, transfer canceled. I made tea. My phone buzzed again, unknown number. I let it roll to voicemail. The transcript popped up a second later. This is Patricia from the Austin Herald, calling about a story and hoping to speak with Elena about I froze. A story? Before I could process, another text flashed, Daniel again. FYI, a reporter might call. There was a misunderstanding last Christmas. Don't engage. It'll only make things messier. I read it twice. My jaw tightened. They were moving pieces. I wasn't surprised. Entitlement rarely goes quiet. It goes public. I wrote press at the bottom of my list and underlined it. Twice. Night came slow and kind. I ate a bowl of soup that tasted like a night off from worry. When I climbed into bed, I didn't scroll. I didn't replay phone calls. I didn't imagine myself as a storm. I imagined myself as a lock. Click. Done. Morning brought blue sky, cedar scent, and a voicemail from Daniel himself. Ms. Moreno, the man said in a voice trained to sound important, we're due in at 2:15. Daniel says you've had second thoughts. I expect a text confirming pickup, or I'll be in touch with my attorney about your interference.
They wanted to make me look small, so they went public. But when you live off someone else's money, public is the last place you want the truth to be told. The headline. 3 days later, I woke to find my name in print. The Austin Herald had run a human interest piece about a widowed woman lashing out at her daughter's family, abandoning respected elders at the airport during the busy holiday season. There was my face, pulled from an old company website photo, lined, unsmiling, a perfect villain. The reporter, Patricia Myers, painted Richard and Thomas Hale as helpless retirees stranded for hours while a difficult mother-in-law refused to lift a finger. Boundaries, that word again. They'd learned how to weaponize therapy speak against me. What Patricia left out? 5 years of checks. The mortgage paid from my account, the down payment drained from my savings, the utilities covered when Daniel was between jobs, the shopping sprees disguised as emergencies. It was a story of omission, which is another word for lying. I didn't slam the paper down. I didn't call Patricia. I didn't even text Marissa. Instead, I pulled the binder from the tote bag by the door, my receipts, my records, my truth. I added the article to the front sleeve, then slid a red pen from the drawer. In the margins, I wrote, 52 degrees and sunny, not a storm. Elders, 58 and 61 in better health than me. 5 years, $198,540 left unmentioned. The ink bled through the thin newsprint. It looked like truth written in fire. By evening, I had copied 12 sets of the binder's contents. Staples squeaked, my printer groaned, but by the time the last copy spat out, there were 12 neat stacks, each one thick with evidence. I thought about mailing them. Anonymous envelopes to neighbors, friends, maybe even Patricia herself. But mailing was slow, too easy to ignore. I thought about posting them online, but screens make people skim, and I didn't want skimming. I wanted silence, the kind that falls when lies crack open in public. Then I remembered the detail that had slipped past them, Marissa's careless Facebook event. Christmas dinner at our home, 12 confirmed. Guests, Daniel's boss, Richard's golf buddies, a cluster of neighbors who already whispered about the Moreno woman funding her daughter's lifestyle. It was perfect, a captive audience, no escape routes, no room for spin. I spent the next 2 days watching, listening. Social media is a window if you learn how to look. Richard's golf buddy posted a photo of the Hale men in their Christmas sweaters, captioned, "Our city's finest, pillars of generosity and grace." Catherine, from their wine club, wrote, "Excited for Daniel and Marissa's famous hospitality." Every post assumed wealth without strain, polish without cracks. No one asked who was paying the bills behind the curtains. I printed those posts too. Screenshots slid into the binder behind the receipts. Hypocrisy doesn't shout, it poses. I wanted proof of the posing. On the morning of Christmas Eve, my phone rang. Marissa. "Please, don't make things worse." They already made it worse. They took it public. Patricia exaggerated. You gave her quotes. Silence. Then a rush of words. "If you love me, don't come tonight." "I do love you. That's why I'm coming." "Why?" "To give you back your story. Because right now it isn't yours, it's theirs, and they wrote me out of it." "Mom." Marissa's hands trembled in her lap. Her eyes begged me not to go further, but silence had already cost me too much. This is what it cost, not just money, years, respect. A mother erased so her daughter could sit in rooms like this and pretend she built it all herself. Someone gasped. A fork clattered to the floor. I straightened, calm as stone. "I won't stay for dinner. I only came to deliver the truth. You can do with it what you like." I turned toward the door. Behind me, the murmur sharpened. Outrageous, deception, how could they? But one voice cut through the rest. Patricia Myers, the reporter herself, seated at the far end of the table. I had noticed her until she spoke. "May I keep this?" she asked, lifting her copy of the binder. The room went still. I smiled. "I brought it for you." And with that, I left. The night air wrapped me like a coat. In the distance, sirens wailed faintly, unrelated but perfectly timed. I walked to my car, heel striking the pavement with the rhythm of something ending, or maybe beginning. The story was no longer mine to tell. It was already out in the world, and this time it carried my receipts. They thought the story was finished. They forgot I owned the receipts, and when the room turned against them, no headline in the world could save them. The front door clicked shut behind me, but I didn't drive away. I stayed in my car across the street, engine off, watching the windows of Marissa's glowing house. Inside, 12 people sat frozen, binders in hand. From the street, I couldn't hear the words, only the sudden silence that comes when a mask slips. I imagined forks abandoned, glasses untouched, Daniel's face pale as printer paper. It was exactly the kind of silence I'd lived without for 5 years. By morning, my phone buzzed with a dozen messages, half from numbers I didn't know, half from Marissa, none I opened. Instead, I opened the Austin Herald on my tablet, and there it was. Patricia Myers had written again. This time the headline read, The mother who paid for it all, the hidden story behind the Hale family's holiday drama. Her words cut different now, not flattering Richard and Thomas's victims, but laying out their dependence in black and white. She quoted directly from the binders, the transfers, the receipts, even my note about 52 degrees and sunny. And at the end, Patricia wrote a sentence that made me set the tablet down just to breathe. If family is who shows up for you, then Elena Moreno has been more family than anyone at that table until the moment she stopped. That afternoon, I walked to the mailbox and found 3 envelopes. The first, a card from a neighbor, handwritten. "We had no idea. You deserve better." The second, a notice from the credit union confirming the canceled transfers, final. The third, thick, embossed from Richard Hale's law firm. I laughed when I opened it. Cease and desist, as if numbers were slander, as if math could be intimidated. I pinned it to the corkboard in my kitchen, a trophy. By evening, the Herald's article had spread. Local news picked it up, online forums debated it. Half the comments called me ruthless. The other half called me a hero. For the first time in years, strangers saw me as something more than invisible. At 9 p.m., Marissa showed up at my door. No makeup, hair messy, the navy cardigan she always wore when she couldn't stop crying. "Mom, please," she whispered when I opened the door. "You've ruined everything." "Everything?" I asked. "Or just the version of everything they built on me?" She stepped inside, eyes darting around like the walls themselves might judge her. "They're furious," she said. "Daniel's parents, his boss, everyone. They say we look like liars." "You were," I said. She flinched. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "You meant for it to go far enough to erase me. You meant for me to be the villain in a story Patricia wrote the first time." Tears welled, spilling hot down her cheeks. "I just wanted them to respect us." I softened, but only a little. "Respect doesn't come from borrowed chandeliers or staged dinner parties, Marissa. It comes from truth, and you didn't give me any." She sank into my couch. For the first time, she looked small, not polished, not curated, just my daughter, lost. "What do I do?" she whispered. "That," I said, "is finally your problem to solve." 2 days later, the Herald ran a follow-up, not from Patricia this time, but from a financial columnist. It wasn't just about generosity, it was about fraud. Someone, Daniel, it turned out, had refinanced their mortgage last spring. Without my knowledge, he'd listed me as a guarantor. My forged signature sat neatly on a document worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Patricia hadn't found it. The columnist had. And suddenly the story wasn't just drama. It was criminal. Calls poured in, from lawyers, from investigators, from Marissa herself, begging me not to press charges. But I didn't need to press anything. The truth was pressing hard enough. Richard and Thomas withdrew from their clubs. Daniel's boss placed him on leave pending review. The neighbors stopped waving at Marissa in the driveway. And me? I bought fresh paint from my kitchen walls. New curtains that matched nothing but my own taste. For the first time in years, my money went where I lived. Every brushstroke felt like a sentence rewritten. Every receipt this time had my name in the beneficiary line. I didn't need to stand in their dining room again. The story had already done the work for me. But one thing lingered. Daniel's forged signature. A crime that might pull my daughter down with him if she'd known. A question I hadn't asked yet. When I finally called her, I didn't start with anger. I started with a single, quiet sentence. "Marissa, did you know?" The pause on the line told me everything.
What will Alana do about the forgery? Will she protect her daughter or let the law take its course? How far will the Hales go to claw back their image? And what kind of ending does a woman choose when revenge has already tasted like freedom?
Revenge tasted sweet in the beginning, but the real question is what you do when the sweetness fades and only the truth remains. I sat at my kitchen table with the papers spread out like a crime scene. Daniel's neat, careful handwriting, my name in ink that wasn't mine, a notary stamp that looked authentic, but too clean, too perfect. The financial columnist had been right. Daniel hadn't just taken my money, he'd taken my identity. The law would call it forgery, fraud, maybe even theft. But what the law called it didn't matter as much as what I chose to call it. I could call it justice and hand it over to the DA. I could call it family and bury it in silence. Or I could call it something else entirely. Leverage. That evening, Marissa came back. Not crying this time, not furious, just hollow. She sat on my couch and said, "I knew." 3 words, and with them, every excuse she might have made crumbled. I said, "You knew he signed my name." She nodded. "He said it was just a formality, that you'd have helped anyway, that it wasn't real fraud, just paperwork." Paperwork is power. Paperwork takes houses, gives loans, ruins lives. She stared at her hands. I didn't want to lose him. I thought if I asked you directly, you'd say no, and then he'd bling me. The honesty hurt more than the lie ever had. So you let him take from me, because it was easier than telling him no? She lifted her head, eyes glassy. I was scared. I almost reached for her hand. Almost. But the woman who had built binders and balance sheets knew better. Love without respect is a pit. And I had already climbed out once. The next morning, I took the binder and drove to the courthouse. The air smelled of cedar mulch and exhaust, the kind of morning where you decide who you are by what you file or don't file. Inside, I filled out the form. Petition of complaint. Forgery. Fraud. But when I reached the line asking for primary defendant, my pen hovered. Daniel? Or Marissa? Or both? My stomach turned. My heart hammered. I thought of Maria, my mother, gone now, but whose voice still whispered, "Protect the child, even when the child is grown." I scratched through Marissa's name, left only Daniel's. The DA's office called 2 weeks later. "Miss Moreno, you should know, this isn't Daniel's first." First? He has 2 sealed warnings from Massachusetts, credit card manipulation, employer reimbursement fraud. Nothing that stuck, but this one will. I hung up, my body buzzing. All those years of believing it was me, too demanding, too dramatic, too inconvenient, when all along the rot had been his. And Marissa? She had chosen him. Over me. Over herself. Over the truth. But the system would choose now. By spring, Daniel's name filled headlines. Tech consultant indicted on mortgage fraud charges. Richard and Thomas withdrew even further, their circle of power collapsing into itself. Marissa moved into a small apartment downtown. She tried calling twice, leaving messages about loneliness, about missing me. I didn't delete them, but I didn't answer either. Not yet. Because forgiveness, I learned, is not about letting someone back in. It's about letting yourself step out. On Easter Sunday, I set my own table. Not in Barton Hills, not under chandeliers, but in my kitchen, with sunlight spilling through the windows I'd finally replaced. The table was mismatched wood. The plates were thrift store finds. The food was mine. Cornbread dressing, baked ham, green beans with garlic. People who wanted me there. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. I understand now. I hope one day you'll let me earn back a place at your table. I stared at it, heart pulling two directions at once. I didn't reply, not because I didn't love her, but because some replies take years. Instead, I raised my glass. To family, the ones who show up. Glasses clinked. Laughter filled the room. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone with the last binder. I pulled out the final page, the one with the total circled in red. $298,540. I fed it to the fire. Watched the ink curl and blacken. Watched the number disappear. Then I whispered to myself, steady and certain, debt paid. Not theirs to me, mine to myself. For every year I let love mean erasure. For every holiday I let silence buy me a seat. I was done. And as the paper turned to ash, I smiled. Because some stories don't end with revenge. They end with freedom.